meat in the freezer.
So happy I'm on lunch.
It's so stupid. I think it might work.
Chaos, like every hunting season.
Seems like it's not going anywhere, but it also seems like it could go somewhere.
He lost his paper bag, I swear.
I will not. I'm actually pretty good directionally.
So this is a very different flow. Usually we do our show live. We have bourbon. It's in my basement. We call it the Cat Pee basement, but it's got a nice look and feel to it. But anyway, we're kind of live at the movie theater here at the Majestic, and I'm with Andy Wines. And you are what I would consider to be a serial entrepreneur.
That's accurate. Yeah.
And to frame it that way is important because you're really busy.
Oh, that's bullshit. Never busy. Busy is a shit word. So I did a whole hour earlier today about words. I wrote a book.
Words fucking matter.
Words fucking matter. And we really didn't even talk about shit words. And now, that's a misnomer with me. So we'll get into that because right now you're cutting into my deer hunting time.
Yeah.
It's Friday afternoon. It's before daylight savings time. So I get that extra hour of between work and hunting. And busy's bullshit. I am productive. I'm intentional. I sleep 7.5, 8 hours of sleep a night. I work typically, I do a 20-20-40 schedule. That's my life. So 20 hours in my business, 20 hours on my business, 10 hours on myself. That's it. I do 2 or 3 things a day for 2 or 3 hours. Once I do those 2 or 3 things, I fuck off. So today I am podcasting. I started my next book, and then that's it. And then I'm going to take a book with me out to the woods. That is my full. That's it. I've had 3 things on my schedule all day: 2 podcasts, 1 Zoom call, and then I deer.
Well, busy is a not great word. Productive,
yes,
intentional.
Yes.
Nonetheless, your time is very valuable. So how you spend it is important.
Yeah.
And with that being said, going to the deer woods is a way to, for me, it resets the batteries, gets me back to neutral. If I don't have that space to myself, especially in nature, I'm a very grumpy human being, or I can be. So it really sets me into a good place. But the reason I talk about busy or time is because a lot of folks don't have that much time to deer hunt unless they're doing it full time, unless they're like some sort of industry person. Like for me, I'm raising 3 kids that are very young. They're 3, 5, and 7. But 3, 5, and 7. Day job, side hustle. 3 of them. It's a non-echo. There's 3 of them. It's kind of ridiculous. But so my time to go deer hunting is pretty minimal this year. Actually, I've only been out once, and I don't know how many more times I'm going to go out. So it's hard when there's a lot going on and when you have a lot of things you're running. So for you to put that time at the top of your list for your fuck off time, I think it's pretty great. So sorry for cutting your deer woods time. That sucks. And it's kind of
I know. I'm not. It's 70 degrees out and way too early in the day. Actually, that's where I want to. So here's where I'm at. 2 days ago. So I live in Mequon, Wisconsin. So southeastern or southwestern Ozaukee County. And I'm not real Mequon. There's Mequon is hoity-toity, good school district, country club, 2-story big house. I live on 116th in Donges Bay, and Mequon stops at 124th.
Okay.
I can see the landfill from my backyard. I live on a farm. My deer stand is about 125 yards from my back door. That's the one I hunt often. And then I otherwise have 25 acres accessible to me that is 15 minutes away.
Okay.
And I wear camel pants every day.
So it works out pretty well.
Right? So that's convenient. And I always have a hooded sweatshirt in my Jeep, and I shoot crossbow. So this time of year, I put the crossbow in the back of my Jeep, and then
what crossbow are you shooting?
Raven. I have a 10. I have a 10-point, and I have another one that's not. I have a $280 cheapie, and I like the cheapie because I don't feel bad when I bang it against stuff. And I'm sitting over a soybean field or a cornfield, depending on the year.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm sitting about 20 feet up. I got 7 stands over this plot. Okay. The plot is about 15 acres, and then there's another 10 acres of woods. So I take very calculated shots. It's see deer, hear deer,
Yeah.
Because my bow hunting is essentially leave work early, enjoy the weather, and watch deer that are too far away from me for hours and take a book, and that's my reading time. So that's why I love your podcast, The Okayest Hunter, right? This is if I'm at home, I'm going to be on the YouTubes, right? If I'm at work, I'm going to stare at my screen and get nothing done, right? So Friday afternoon is a really good time to go sit in the woods. Yeah. That's it. I'm sitting in the woods. And then gun hunting's the opposite. Gun hunting, I grew up jump shooting. Okay. So I'll shotgun.
Yep.
So that is walking, kicking deer, and very little shooting. It's more pushing deer to my uncles and my brothers and whomever.
So you got, yeah, I mean, we could talk about hunting that's what this podcast is all things. I could go in a lot of different paths here, and I would like to get to the gun deer camp stuff. That's like highly traditional. It's basically a holiday in the state. Oh, yeah. Or at least it ought to be at some point. But the deer you have on your property, are you running trail cams or cell cams or anything like that too?
We have, I had the two properties. So in my backyard, we have 3 trail cams. And we have a very intentional spot.
Yep.
So we planted sorghum. It's right between the woods, and we have a little, basically a meadow between the woods and where the crops are planted. So it is a food plot. Dug a pond is a stretch of the word. Dug an area where water resides.
Yeah.
And I have 2 stands in that area, depending on really the wind and where I want to sit. And we have trail cams. The thing is, where we hunt, because it's all agricultural, I'm on these groups and they're like, oh, I've been chasing this buck for 3 years. I named him, and it's like Longtooth or, whatever. I'm like, cool. There's a deer within range and it looks tasty. Like, that's it. And so that's my backyard. And where I'm at is Nofsky Tree Farm is right next to me.
Okay.
And so they let all their guys hunt it. And so there's nothing sacred. We're not raising these deer. We're shooting what's nearby.
QDMA is out the window here.
Yeah. And then also there's 60 acres behind me, which is public land. And the city of Mequon only allows like 10 people a year to hunt it.
Yeah.
So thankfully my dad,
cool.
Yeah. So my dad and I are 2 of the 10 people.
Yep.
And the other are like all retired cops and firefighters. So like when they're around, we're like, oh yeah, this is what we've seen. They'll tell us what they let us. So because it's city land, not DNR, they allow permanent stands on there. So it's like, we just communicate like, okay, are you going to be out? All right, I'll stay away from you. You stay away from me. It's not like public where you get up in a tree and someone gets. I've
never been whistled at more in my life as a male.
Yeah.
Than in the deer woods.
Right.
When I'm walking up on someone else's stand.
Yeah. He's not hollering at you. And then the other place I hunt is this gentleman. It's him and his wife. He's a Vietnam vet. She's a hippie, organic farm. And they don't like the deer because the deer eat their stuff. So like if I shot dog-sized deer, like I heard that in your intro, like the dog-sized deer, he's like, cool, you got rid of a deer. And of course, the neighbors nearby with their 10 acres think they were managing the herd. It's like, no, I shoot what comes by because this guy wants the deer gone. And once these deer are gone, new deer will move in because this is suburban hunting. Yeah. Right? I mean, these deer...
They're on a bird feeder circuit, typically in a suburban area.
These deer are moving.
They're not pressured with hunting by and large.
No. So whatever comes through, it's what comes through. Now, smart enough to sit over the soybeans, because there's a food source there and they're moving. They can go anywhere to eat, so it's not, we're not funneling these deer. This is not a huge mathematical equation. It is, where's the wind and how high up do I want to sit is kind of
about it.
That's about it.
And those beans, is it beans this year? Are they turning brown already?
No, this year it's corn.
Okay.
So
that's good because it's more of like a mid-season where they're eating all that, protein to get their necks all big.
Now, the nice thing about the corn is because I was out there a couple of weeks ago, because there was a lot of washout in spring. We had a lot of rain in spring in that area. The corners are dead.
It's kind of nice.
So
it's not cut yet, obviously.
It's not cut yet, but the corners are dead. So if the deer are, in our stands are almost all in the corners, right?
Yeah.
So if the deer are moving, there's a instead of having that like 3-foot window, which is not there's probably 15 to 25 feet where they're transitioning, where they're exposed enough, where it's, ankle high corn. And there's also a couple pockets within the field that historically would be high corn. So again, I'm either looking to intercept them from the woods to the field, depending on where I sit, or I'm sitting over a low spot in the corner.
You're hunting, like if you're doing an evening hunt, which would be today, if you're going out, they're going from bed to food. So they're going to be coming out of bedding and heading to that food plot.
Exactly.
It's a great time to get up and intercept them right now.
So so the place to sit is there's a little meadow. So it's woods and then goes meadow. And that one, there is a really good funnel because there's a lot of willows and real thickets. So they beat this one path down, and it's a question of do they go left or right?
Yeah.
And we have a stand right there. So I'll probably sit on that one. That's a low stand. The challenge with that stand is it's more exposed. So if there is the wrong wind, and they're coming on that stand, it's to the south. So if there's a north or northwest wind,
doesn't work. Yeah,
I'm blowing my scent all into it.
Yeah.
The stand I primarily sit on is in a northeast corner, so I can deal with the west.
So the predominant wind is out of the west typically?
Out of the west. So that's the one I like. So that's the one I normally sit. Also, it's the highest stand over the field.
Okay.
So if nothing's coming by, I can at least track the deer for later in the season to see where they're coming in and out. That's the stand I almost always sit in.
So more like an observation stand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice thing there is when they come down because the field is wider east to west than it is tall north to south, if you will. So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll cut in the field and they'll work their way down right in between, and they'll turn in where it's soft, or where the corner's down.
Yep.
So that's my shot. That's what I do enjoy about bow hunting. It's like you have a shot or you don't.
It's very intimate. It's very close quarter. I mean, a crossbow, you can probably get away with a little bit more than a compound or a trad bow, but it's still, you don't want to have to take a far shot. You want to have it be nice and close.
The farthest shot I think I've ever taken is 35 yards.
Yeah.
They're
right there.
Right. I'm going to hit the deer or I'm not. That's it. My first bow deer, I was with a guide. It was a veterans hunt, and we were sitting on the ground in a meadow, and I shot from the seated position with a crossbow. And I'm like, oh, that was interesting. Right. Like, exactly right. And it was a 4-point, probably 1.5-year-old deer. Right. I was like, that was all. Like, it was so
right
different.
There, yeah.
I mean, talk about intimate. It was 10 yards.
Yep.
Right. And I'm against the little 2-inch diameter tree, just enough to like hold me still. And I leaned into it, took the shot. And that was really interesting because it was, it's not like, I'm used to shotgun where it's like they kick up and you take a shot.
Yeah.
Or rifle where
you can take 200-yard shots.
You're taking your time. Yeah. Like my gun deer buck last year was coming across the field. It stopped. I shot. It ran. It fell down. I mean, there's not a like, oh, that's the deer. It was 8:15 on Saturday morning. Right. And I thought it was a 4-pointer. It was a 7-pointer. I can't eat the rack. So I was happy at a big body deer. Right. I'm like, yep, dinner. Like, and then our family tradition is, and my uncle was hunting with us that day. Our family tradition is take the deer home, obviously field dress it, take it home, hang it, and then cut out the inside loins, and that's lunch. So that's always we've
done that a lot. So my dad, when I was young, we would hunt the Nicolay National Forest up in Shawinigan or wherever. And we'd be down some logging road and his old Dodge Ram Charger. It's beautiful autumn day. And, he shoots. I never shot any deer up there, but he did. And so we cut the loins out, puts a little tiny piece of shit grill out, and we fried up right there, have a couple Oktoberfests and some of the best tailgate time, quality time meal you'll ever have. It's got some onion, some butter, some mushrooms. You fry it up in a frying pan right there. And it's just, there's something about that, it doesn't get, meat doesn't get any fresher.
And for me, there's a sacredness to it. There's a sacredness to me. I grew up hunting with my family, so it's something I do as a family. I love venison. My dad grew up really poor on a farm, and we grew up not wealthy. Like, we didn't buy beef. Like, that red meat was expensive, right? So we had ground venison. Like a hamburger, like, always fell apart because it was ground venison with a little pork mixed in, right? So like ground beef was like a treat in our house. And so because of that, I always looked at hunting as utilitarian. Yeah. Right now, like, I had a girlfriend one time, she's like, okay, so it's $24 for your...
It doesn't actually work out.
Right, and then once you actually do all this stuff, it ain't $3 a pound, right? Like, you're overly committed at that point, right? Plus processing fees, like everything, right? Yes, it is not cash flow
why
positive.
Go get a $15 burger when I can spend $3,000 on a pound of venison,
Now, for my dad and like him growing up on the farm, it was different because it was like, go stand next to this tree, shoot a deer. And if you don't shoot a deer by a certain time, we got to go back and milk the cows, right? So they process all their own meat, so it all worked out. For me, there's something very intimate about the ability to take your own game, to gut a deer in the field, right, when it's still warm, to even cut out the loins when it's still warm, and knowing that, okay, this is where we came from.
I'm connected to your food. Like, the connection to food is very interesting because as a society, we're very disconnected, out of sight, out of mind. We don't want to know what goes on. And to be honest, what does go on is pretty freaking disgusting. Yeah. Like, cows live to die. Yep. Like, the deer had a shot to live, but if you get it, hopefully it's as ethical as you possibly can get it to be. Yeah. But now you have that connection to your food. It's just very different. You treat it differently. When I cook venison, it's a very different process than just getting some food from the store. Yeah, I take great care of how I cook my venison steaks and sear them and so forth. Like, it's a big deal. And it's always a really fun process.
For us, I remember growing up, I would go up Friday night. So we never had deer camp. It was my grandparents' house because they had about 900 acres plus a 6,000 acre wood. Yeah. So like we just think, again, utilitarian. There, like, this is what we do, And I remember I was always able to stay up those 3 days. When everyone went back to school, I would stay up and hunt with my uncles. And Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday night, we would start processing deer. We'd butcher deer. Our best year, we had 27 deer hanging opening weekend. So like, we're cranking. So then this is
It's a lot of meat.
My aunts and uncles all grew up on a farm. So this is 15 people processing deer.
Yeah, that in itself is a lot of tradition in that part of deer camp where people, they go into the pole barn or whatever, everyone shows up and you start chopping away all the deer you got, you package them, you put them in the cooler and everyone takes their share home, Yeah,
and that was the other thing. It was like, I remember that weekend of when there was 27 deer, my dad had shot 6, my one uncle shot 6, another uncle shot 5. And it's like, so what? It took everyone driving. It took luck that they ran your way. It took the right shot, right? It took all this. And at the end of the day, everyone got a split equal cut because it took everybody to get there. And so that taught me too about teamwork and leadership and individual accolades. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so for me, even now to this day, like when somebody gets a deer, especially now I'm the oldest of the 3 brothers, and like I have a couple uncles that are city uncles that didn't grow up hunting and only took up hunting later, in their 40s and 50s. Like when I take them out, like I'm there to serve them. I put them in the best stands. I give them the warmest gear, give them the right gun. My Uncle Tom, for example, 2 years ago, he hunted 40 years, never shot a deer. He shoots 4 deer opening day. He shot buck and a doe in the morning and a buck and a nub, or a nub buck and a doe in the afternoon. And I dragged every one of those deer. I gutted them. There was this guy, one of my dad's friends, who's a traditionalist. We only shoot bucks. It's got to be, 8 points outside the ears.
Sure.
Fine. That's his way. I accept it. He got shitty with my dad because I didn't make my uncle gut his own deer.
He doesn't know how.
He doesn't know how to. He's 70 years old. He's got a bad back. He's got a bad knee, right? He was spent just getting to the stand to and from, right? He was spent. So yeah, I'm going to gut the deer. I'm in my late 30s, early 40s. I'm 40 now. It's like, no, I'm going to gut the deer. I want to make sure it's done right. I don't want tainted meat, right? And so especially
he eats a gut or something like that.
Especially the 2 in the afternoon, it's like, I got my headlamp on and I'm gutting them and field dressing them. It's like, no, I want to make sure this is done right. And so there's some of those traditions that prohibit people from being part of a hunt because it's, you got to do this, this, and this. It's like, how about get in the woods, right? And even now, with hunting, every year there's less and less hunters. And I think it's because we have less men that were brought up in it. And then we have less young men and women because they're intimidated by it.
It's like walking into, I talked to Michael Waddell a while back, and he talked about the analogy of walking into a snowboarding pro shop. If you've never snowboarded before, and they're like,
it's intimidating.
Hey, I want a board. And they're like, well, which kind? Well, I don't know. I've never done it. You walk into a bow pro shop. Hey, I want a bow. I've never done this before. Well, what kind? I don't know. There's a lot of intimidation in trying to learn something new like this, especially if you're not used to firearms and bows and so forth. And then you have all this ego and bravado and look at me and I'm going to shame you if you shoot this little deer. It's like, well, that's no good for the general. So we're actually like kicking people out by just way of like not being inviting,
Also, from a deer population standpoint, shooting only bucks is
not great.
Terrible for the population because what you're now doing, that's the opposite of nature. The strong will survive is nature. Well, now you have all these immature bucks running around because you're only shooting the mature ones. And those are the ones getting hit by cars because they're dumb. Like there's that to it. The other thing that's interesting is you brought that up. The gentleman that started the concealed carry, I read about him in a book recently. I read about him then eventually turned to Delta Defense, right?
Yeah.
Tim.
Can't think of his name, but I'm very familiar. Yeah.
His whole journey started. He went to the Gander Mountain in Germantown, which is now closed. It's a Habitat for Humanity. He went to that Gander Mountain in Germantown to buy a gun, and the guy's like, "Which one do you want?" He's like, "I don't know." He's like, "Well, pick one out and tell me." It's like, how are we going to invite people into our culture when it's prohibitive? And even that, like when I go to Wisconsin firearms training, I remember the one time I went there, this guy was like, "Oh, Glock this and Glock that." I'm like, "Hey man, I got 20 years in the military. I was military police. I'm a non-lethal weapons instructor. And you're making me feel, you're emasculating me because I'm asking questions. And I don't want to have a pissing match about 9mm versus 45. Like I'm here to learn from you, the expert. I want to get an education so I can make an informed buying decision."
Yeah.
So here's me, 30 years of hunting and being around firearms, military, and I was intimidated. Can I imagine if somebody stumbled across a YouTube video about hunting and never hunted before in their lives and walked in Cabela's and had someone fucking emasculate them? Like, how are we going to, but then there's people like, "Oh, there's too many people in the woods." It's like, no, there's too many deer getting hit by cars, right? Like there's not enough pressure on the deer population. Like we're humans, right? Food chain, we are above the deer. It's our job to control the population and eat them. Otherwise they starve, right? Because there's only so much food and there's a lot of cars. That's actually why Wisconsin has so many tags. right? Because the insurance companies run
Yeah, I
Wisconsin.
think gun season they give out. I mean, I don't. Ballparking 600,000 tags get sold.
But I get like 6 tags a year.
Yeah.
I get my.
Yeah, I got a couple of tags, buck tag, couple more for gun. Yeah.
And then if I run out of tags, you $12 get another tag, right? Because I'm in, I hunt primarily in Ozaukee County and then Washington County. And you're like, oh yeah, whatever, farmland 2. Yeah. Like, yep, here's another doe. Like, shoot all the does you want.
Yeah, there's some people call it Domageddon, but there's a lot of like SeekOne's a brand on YouTube. They're one of the bigger ones in the entire category. So Lee Ellis is the guy's name that runs it. They do like suburban hunting. They we're one of the first people to really kind of figure that whole thing out, knocking on doors. But they do a huge doe hunt every year, and then they take collectively their community and they donate it
all the meat. Yeah, venison. It's all their time, energy, and resources so they can donate the meat because they're still doing herd management. And those guys are really good archers, and they're very selective. And,
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see what they've done. So we're doing some pretty cool things this year that we're starting to lift off right now. We're doing so it's not all bad because there are a lot of great people in the hunting community that are inviting folks in. Yeah. That's a lot of the OKS hunter community is this egoless, very come as you are kind of community. And we've grown a bunch over the years. So there's a lot more of that we see just directly. There's a lot of indirect stuff too. And usually anytime you run into another hunter in person, it's almost always a great positive experience. It's the online stuff that's just full of just trash pandas, egos, and keyboard warriors, and keyboard cowboys, and all that stuff. I forget the point I was going to make, but we're doing a fulfill your tag program this year where we're just kind of piloting it right now. If it goes well, next year we're going to do quite a bit more with it. So the concept is if you go to buy your tag this year for your archery or your gun, tag, whatever you're into. And archery is very different, as we talked about, intimate, you get a lot of time in the woods to yourself, very solitude. The deer camp stuff is usually more camaraderie focused. Nonetheless, when you go to buy your tag, whether you're in Wisconsin, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, Iowa, it doesn't matter, Pennsylvania, typically when you go to a DNR website to buy your tag, there's almost always an option to donate $5, $10, $15, $25 to conservation of some sort. When you do that, if you opt to donate those dollars, if you just send that to OKS Hunter, sales@okshunter.com is our email, our main one. The amount that you donated, we're cataloging all that as a community. We believe hunting is conservation. So we always want to take our platform and do good. I'm going way off topic here because it's something I'm excited about. So fulfill your tag is more about showing that you did do more good for conservation as a singular person, but then we're taking all these numbers, tallying them all up to say, hey, I'll just make up some bullshit numbers here real quick, but let's just say our community shares with us via email and we tallied all these numbers up that maybe we raised $12,000. We didn't raise it. Yeah. We just show that these hunters did give back to conservation. And then in exchange, we're giving this year, it's a sticker that is I'm very big into Stoic philosophy. So there's the sticker that's a memento mori that's you could die tomorrow. So people keep this coin in their pocket, like a challenge coin. So the design of the sticker is meant to be on a coin, but we were too far into the year to go down supply chain of getting a physical coin made. So stickers were easy. Let's do that. So as a token of appreciation, you get this really cool sticker. And then next year we're going to do coins. And then we have a lot of partners like Bear Archery, Muck Boots, Nozzler Ammunition, so forth that they're going to do a match. Hopefully they'll do a match up to a certain percent of that to raise even more funding for that. And then you'll get a challenge coin of this thing. So just trying to do really good in the hunting community overall. And so we donate 1% of our revenue goes to Waukesha County Land Conservancy, just a local organization that buys land and then allows public recreation and hunting on their properties. And they do a lot of conservation efforts around things like making sure there's good bee habitat, wildlife, flowers, and all of those things in addition to good deer herd populations. So just having some good being done in the community, I think is a positive thing. The fact that you talk about the utilitarian aspect of it and just getting out there to go enjoy nature, fill your freezer, that's all good stuff too and should be part of it.
Well, and what's interesting, because this audience listening to this is probably not hunters, right? A lot of the shows before this and after this are our business, right? One of the misnomers is people think, oh, hunters are out there destroying the deer population, destroying our woods, putting up tree stands, all this other stuff. It's no, we spend time, so energy, and money. We spend all this time, energy, and money to make nature better, so it's not overrun. Right? And the money we spend is there for the DNR to do other wildlife rescue projects. If you're part of a gun club, every gun club has initiatives, right? Whether it's, community cleanup days or money they put towards things. The gun club my dad is part of, they buy land. And so it's called conservation land. It's like, you have to be part of the gun club to be in this conservation land. And a lot of the conservation land is old, either railroad tracks or old buildings or old farmland that's now let nature take its course. So it's like, we're reclaiming a lot of these wetlands. It doesn't happen from government dollars. It happens from people that want to then hunt the land. So it's like, all right, well, we'll reclaim this and then we get more ducks or we get more deer. Yeah, we want to hunt them. Like, that's part of the gig.
But that hunting is what conserves them. So like even the Pittman-Robertson Act is a good example of anytime you buy ammunition, the most dollars of the margin of that purchase is going back to conservation efforts. Like there's a lot of those types of things. There's a lot of nonprofit organizations in the hunting community, like RMEF, the Mule Deer Foundation. There's a ton of whitetail. There really are so many that all have, and some of them are really folks like BHA, Backhunter, Country and Anglers, really folks around like lobbying in Washington for things. So there's a lot of like policymakers that are part of those organizations that know legal things that I would never, ever comprehend that are doing things on the behalf of hunters like you and me in Washington at Capitol Hill and making sure that our land is protected and that we have access to it, because we're so outnumbered as a hunting community at large in this country. Like, it's not that there's anti-hunters that are against us. They exist and we're not going to change their mind, but the mass majority, it's like 70% of the middle are just people that don't know about hunting or are neutral and could easily be converted to be against it. And at the ballot box, the hunting is just outnumbered 10-1, and it could go away. And there's some slippery slope things happening in Colorado, and they're using like a very specific language around trophy hunting. But the definition of trophy hunting could be easily translated into whitetail hunting. And so there's legislation right now being put in to change the terminology, because then it could cascade in a very negative way and could actually like fundamentally change how we do anything in the deer woods, so to speak. So, having all these organizations and donating money and like being part of those gun clubs, all that stuff is really important and matters. Like keeping your finger on that pulse is, I think, special and important. I mentioned earlier, I have 3 kids. They're young. One of my favorite pastimes as a child was just hiking in the woods with my dad, but then eventually knowing that I could go and hunt and like whatever it is, being a little boy, seeing a bow and arrow, there's just something in your bones that tells you got to do it and want to have it. I don't know. And so for my kids, seeing me do these things, they're now enthused and excited about it. And I'm not going to push them into it by any stretch. If they're interested, great. If they're not, great. I don't really care. If they are, I'll fan the flames as much as they'll let me. But I want to ensure that there's something for them to do in the future too. This is just such an important pastime and heritage to be able to have the privilege to do it, versus like, other countries like Europe, everything's pay to play and you really can't hunt. There's no public land you can just go hunt. It doesn't work like that there. It's very different. And
they're also not, European countries they don't grow up around guns and bows like as much as we do, right? Like it is, right? It's the Second Amendment for a reason. And it's good that we grow up around those, right? Or not those things. I say it's good that we grow up understanding where we come from and how we got here as a country. And to your point about your kid, my daughter's 10. I have exposed to her lots of things. I mean, she did ballet and tumbling and gymnastics, and now she does soccer and volleyball and basketball and football. Like, she does all the things. And I've taken her hunting. I've never pressured into it. And last year she finally said, Dad, I want to shoot a deer. I'm like, okay. So she's got a BB gun. My dad got her a 410. So this year for her birthday in May, I got her a compound bow, his kid's bow. And they're like, okay, we're at 10, we're going to start practicing. We're going to see what that looks like. And she goes out with me and she makes it about an hour in the winter, especially. So I got last year. It was the year before when she went out with me. We went out about 2:30, 2:45, this gun season. I think it was the Friday or Saturday after Thanksgiving. And I'm like, all right, we'll sit for 2 hours, 2:30 to 4:30, we'll pack it up. And I also know about 3:45, that's when they start moving. I'll have a shot about 4:15. If I'm going to have a shot, it's going to be between 4 and 4:15. And it was like 5 to 4, came out, watched it for 2 minutes, went broadside, and I probably hit it at, I don't know, it was 45, 50 yards, not far. Deer goes a little bit and then falls down. And then my daughter goes, are we done now? I'm cold. And I was like, no, we only just started. And
now the work starts.
Yeah, now the work starts. And I was hunting with my dad. So
that's when you get warm, though. It's okay.
Exactly. I'm like, no, let's sit here, let the deer expire, get up. And she went from a couple years ago being freaked out about the deer hanging in the shed to watching me harvest an animal to now watching us butcher it and ask questions.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's slow exposure. And for her, it's been a slower. For me, like from 5 years old, I used to go with a cap gun instead of with my grandpa. And I wanted to be a man, right? And like, a gun was as important as a hammer. I'm like, I'm being a man, right? I'm imitating. And so for me, I always wanted to hunt. So it's like, yes, this is what I'm going to do. I'm also the oldest of the Wines men. So I have 27 cousins and a bunch of older males. I'm the oldest one with the Wines last name, with a family name. So like there was this mystique, like, oh, you're going to hunt, you're going to carry on the tradition. And so I always hunted because I hunted. And then a couple of years ago when I really got into bow hunting, I'm like, okay, I hunt because I want to hunt, not out of this family legacy. I have to keep the tradition.
Oh, yeah, no, it's totally a desire.
Opening weekend is like this celebrate time. Actually, this year, I'm going to the Packers-Niners game on the Sunday of opening weekend. Matchup. And like, that was
that's tough.
I know. That was like a strong consideration whether I did that, because opening weekend, it's sacred. Like,
it is sacred.
We don't do anything. I've
gotten fights with my wife over, I'm not going to go to that wedding.
No, you get pregnant in what? What's the math? You get pregnant in February? Not happening, Jack. Yeah. We ain't having kids in November. That ain't how we do things in our family.
You have to natural family planning.
Exactly. Right. We don't mess around. I like how the guys over our shoulder are laughing because like this is right. You have your tradition.
Usually
we have
in this
ours.
state, in Wisconsin, somebody knows somebody that hunts. It's like, my uncle or my grandpa or my friend. Like it's not. So abstractly, we're not in California doing this.
No,
this is it is. If you're not, it's a total like we're niche down in like a core demographic of a very specific industry. So
for us, it's opening weekend sacred, and then also Thanksgiving morning. So Thanksgiving morning,
that's a fun one.
Is the full family hunt, and that's the one we don't sit because I'm a non-sitting individual.
I can tell.
Yeah, right. So my uncles will sit because they're old and they're a much better shot than I am. And so for years, we would walk the marsh. So the Brilliant Marsh is like 6,500 acres. It's literally across the street from my grandparents' house. So we'd walk down, we'd walk the marsh. We get lost every time. It's real simple. Keep the power lines on your left. And as long as you keep the power lines on your left, you'll be generally heading south. And eventually you turn right.
It's too high, you can't see.
Yeah, and I'm 6'4", and it's too high for me, like right off the bat. It's times where I put the shotgun, I unload the shotgun, I put it in my back because I'm merely walking the marsh. I got my hip boots on, and they're normally not enough. Right? And it's like, why do we walk the marsh? Because we walk the marsh. We walk the marsh to remind ourselves how insignificant we are, right? And whether we get a deer or not, then the walk back to the house is the best of time.
Is the most indelible memory.
It is. It is like even in business, right? We don't sit back and talk about the day that went right. We talk about the day that sucked. Right, and that's our right. Jordan Peterson talks about this at length, and even Andrew Tate. Throw it out to those guys. I watch a lot of their stuff, and Jordan Peterson talks about the cross you choose to bear. Life will give you a cross, right? It's your choice. And Andrew Tate talks about the role of a man is to suffer, because the more you suffer, the more you gain, the stronger you become. Right? The Marines will say that the pain is weakness leaving the body, and it's like, you have to embrace the suck. And do you do it standing up and become stronger and better and more adaptable? Or do you do it laying there and taking it? And deer hunt is like, it is easier. Right? Let's use the words easy and hard, both shit words. It is easier to go to my 9 to 5, get a fucking paycheck, go to the grocery store, get my Costco card on, right, and buy meat. That is easier, right? We have been domesticated by life, right? It is simple for me to work on myself physically, mentally, and emotionally so that I can go out in the woods and I can take an animal. I can choose to own a business so that I have the luxury and the time to go hunt. I can take a book so I can enhance my knowledge, right? I also have the physical capabilities, right? There's so many people in this world that are inadequate and overweight and everything else like that. Most people that hunt, like they're physical people, right? It's not like, I'm going to spend 1 week a year being in shape. It's like, no, you spend all year getting in shape. I spend all year getting
you find out how out of shape you are real quick when you try.
Oh my God, that first deer you drag, you're like, right.
As long as they're burning, I think one's going to collapse. I'm not even that out of shape. Like, what the hell?
I know. You know what? This year, so the last 4 years, I was in a relationship with a woman, and we used to go hiking every weekend. And I was always like, this is my gear. Like right now, dragging it. If this afternoon, if I get a deer, it'll be a test of how in shape I am right now. Like I play volleyball 3 or 4 days a week. I'm relatively in shape. Not the same as hiking. It's not the same as dragging a deer.
Go get a boxing bag, just drag that for 100 yards through the woods, which isn't a clear path.
Oh no. There's no snow on the ground. It ain't slick.
Yeah.
right? Last year, last year I shot a 6-pointer, 7-pointer, bow hunting. Corn was still on, and it fell, and I was like, "Fuck it, I'm dragging it through the corn." So I just picked a row, just
trudge through. Yeah,
just put my head down. And the thing is like the more you stop, the harder it is to start.
Yes.
So I'm gonna go until you like take that wincing knee, like you take the one step and you just like fall forward, and then you lean back. You're like, all right, it's like if don't take a knee, like fall forward, and then it's like that whole attitude, like keep falling forward.
Sometimes I'm hoping I fall so I can take a break.
Oh yeah, no,
because I'm forced upon you. But
I don't want to get right. And then where I hunt, there's like that last ditch right by the road, right?
Yeah,
you're like, oh, I'm so
impossible.
clear. And that ditch, I don't know, 8 foot, 10 foot, it might as well be 100 feet, right? You're like, I don't know, right? And then as soon as you stop, you're like, that was worth it, and throw it up on the tailgate and away you go. And it's like, that to me is, that's a hell of a lot
There's
more
something to be
utilitarian
said
than
about
going for a walk or playing a volleyball game.
Yeah, working and accomplishing and achieving things is got some sort of intrinsic, not reward, but
it's dopamine
value. I don't know how to, it's very hard for me to articulate why that feels so good to have a sense of actual accomplishment in something physical. Like so I work in digital marketing all day. I have to be building things and seeing results to feel like I've done something. Now, rewind, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something like that, I was doing radon mitigation installations because I had to learn the business from the inside out to market it. So I had to follow the owner along, and he taught me how to do, I'd never done I'm very incompetent when it comes to like being a handyman of any sort. Would love to learn more, and hopefully one day I have the time to like dedicate more of that. I love working with my hands. But I remember like coring a hole into the basement floor, finding the drain tile, coring a hole into that, like cutting the pipe, thinking through the math of how I have to measure this, where my angle is going to be, where my turns going to be, putting the fan on, climbing a ladder, putting it on the roof, do all this stuff. And at the end of the day, I'm like, looking, there's a literal physical thing I built.
Yep.
That felt good. Deer hunting is that.
Yep.
I like have studied this puzzle. I'm reading the wind. I'm looking at the bedding area. I'm understanding food sources. I'm figuring out hunting pressure. I'm navigating around all of it. I'm learning how to set up my stand, my sticks, my saddle, shooting my bow on a regular basis so I get confidence at full draw. I finally get out there. Deer does what it's supposed to do. It reads the script. I make this never goes this way. It's very rare.
Oh, yeah. No, this is beautiful. It's very romantic, yeah.
When it does, and that deer falls and I track the blood trail and it's there, and then the work starts and you do all that dragging and hemming, hawing, you're sweating, bullets and all this stuff. And you finally get to your truck, and then you fricking cut those loins out and you cook it up on your grill. And my kids eat the venison that same night. That whole entire thing has something so rewarding that's incredibly hard to articulate to people that don't hunt. And if you hunt, you get it. Like, it'd be like, I'm not a female. I've never given birth. I will never understand what that is like. I will never understand that.
Yep.
I can't. I never will be able to. But you can understand hunting because you can go do it. You could bring someone with. You could mentor hunt, and someone could at least understand it to some degree.
The challenge is not even deer hunting. There's people that never do anything physical to see a physical result.
Yeah.
Right. Sitting in front of a computer and producing marketing, for example, like you. Right. I'm an Excel spreadsheet wizard, right? I love me some P&Ls. I love when a solution comes
You can look at mine later. We could talk about that.
No, I love doing that. That's actually the next book I'm writing. That's the conversation I had right before this. I'm starting my third book. I get a lot of satisfaction out of it. It is satisfying. I feel accomplished. When you tie a physical accomplishment to a mental accomplishment, and with deer hunting, even the emotional component, that's the overwhelming feeling. That's exactly what you just described, right? You had the mental, I did all the things right. I read the wind, I read the beds, I knew where they're coming from, right? There was a physical. I put myself physically in this position. And I also put the work in up until this point. And then the emotional component comes in. You took the life of something.
It's a heavy thing,
right?
Yep.
And also by doing it, you were able to provide for your family, right? Something that you would put so much work into. That is not the same as getting your paycheck and going to Costco and cooking up burgers on the grill. It's not. And so hunting, and there may be other things in life that people can get a similar satisfaction out of. Right? I would love to hear about those things. For me, hunting is all of those things because it all takes work. Work is this thing in society that people want to avoid, right? There's that old adage like, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. No, that's bullshit.
Well, let me talk about that for 2 seconds. And I'm very good at starting my sentence in the middle of other people's, but I actually do what I love for work.
Yes.
I literally, my job is what I love collectively. And there's times I'll tell my wife, I'm like, I don't feel like I did anything today, but I did.
We were in the zone.
And it doesn't feel like work. And I'm like, oh, I feel like I should be suffering more. What's wrong with me? That's really interesting.
Well, then pick something else to suffer about.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's just it.
Like if when you can find a place in time where you're doing something that feels like play. Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, he was a Hungarian philosopher. He talks about you're in the flow, where the challenge is great and so are your skills. So you're in the flow. Mm-hmm. So what feels like play to you, right, would be work to somebody else. At the end of the day, it was work. Mm-hmm. You had to hone in your craft and your skills. When I go on stage, I do keynotes, right, and I do workshops. And when I'm on stage, especially with workshops, and people are asking me questions, and I'm playing with the audience, I'm up there playing.
Yeah.
It feels childlike playing because I am coming from a place of abundance. I'm coming from a place of love. I'm coming from a place
another philosopher calls that eudaimonia.
What's that?
Eudaimonia is another philosophical term that talks about when you've gotten so good at something, it's like as simple as breathing. Yep. You've experienced some sort of eudaimonia. And I forget which philosopher mentioned it, but it's a term that I love when you actually go and research what it means and how to get that good at something. Like Jesus Christ was probably someone that had eudaimonia when it came to like carpentry. Yeah. Where it's like everything you're doing, you're so good at it because you have the 10,000 hour rule, maybe. Yep. It's something to that effect.
Yeah, there's the 10,000 hour rule or the 10,000 reps, right? I mean, if you think about elite athletes will often talk about, well, time slows down for them. It's because they've already made that shot 10,000 times. They've already envisioned themselves. Schwarzenegger has a really good documentary on Netflix right now. Talk about, he became Mr. Olympian because he visualized it and visualized it and visualized it. And everything he did went back to that visualization. So when he got up on stage, it was almost not rewarding to him because he was already there. So mentally, times, he'd already done that. So it's no different than hunting. It's like you get enough reps in, right? The feeling, I used to play sports and I still play volleyball and whatnot. And I still get nervous when I get on stage and there's all those things. However, there's an anticipation. When I'm in the woods for hours on end, staring at the same corn, right? And it's like this very static image. And all of a sudden a deer comes out. The heart races.
Well, I've had a deer bust me out of the tree stand because my legs started twitching uncontrollably.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is that, body? Why did that happen?
Why? Oh, I had one where my left leg 2 years ago. I thought it was cold, and it was like, no, I was nervous because there was a deer, and I was watching it. It was like I watched it so long.
Yeah,
my body's like, hey, idiot, do something. I'm like, it's like 250 yards opening day. I'm like,
calm down.
Calm down, right? And yet I'm like, come on, like a dog on a scent,
It's not just adrenaline with deer hunting, though. It's something more.
Different.
It's something very primal.
Absolutely, it is primal, absolutely, and that's why when I'm dragging a deer out, it's like my adrenaline. I'm like, I'm a man, right? I got the testosterone, I got the adrenaline, I got the dopamine kick. Everything's kicking in, and it's like, I can drag 1,000 deer at this point.
Yeah,
And then the next day, your ass is killing you.
Yeah, you're like, really sore.
Your ass and you
don't use those muscles very.
Yeah, you're like, that ain't what I do normally. No, it is. I think the word you said, but it's primal, and that's the beautiful thing. And that's the thing. Maybe it's not really discussed a lot. Like whenever in the Facebook groups or in the books, it's all about the tactics and the techniques. And
there's a lot of that these days. And the how-tos and the educational stuff that exists. Yeah, there's a lot of tactics.
So yesterday we were talking about the Brewers, who in all their whatever they lost. I don't care about baseball so much, and they lost as they do. And the guy I was talking with, he goes, there's something romantic about baseball. And maybe there is to him, right? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. For me, there is something romantic about hunting. It is you against all the, especially bow hunting, right? It's you or me, right? It's me against all the elements. I can do everything right and go wrong, right? I can do everything wrong and go right. And the opportunity you have, really, again, is you're taking a life for the sake of life. There's something romantic about that. I've spent 20 years in the military. I was deployed to Iraq. I've been blown up. I've done all those things. There's nothing romantic about war, right? War is a business. There's something romantic about hunting, and yet for me, initially, I thought they were the same thing, or they were similar enough. There is something romantic about deer hunting. There's something romantic about one of my favorite things is when someone gets their first deer, right? And even to this day, my dad taught me this. Whenever someone gets a deer, the first thing you do is you go up there, you shake their hand, you congratulate them, right? And there's the part of it, the utilitarian in the harvest, and you counted on them to make the shot and all those other things. There's also something romantic. My dad has shot hundreds of deer in his lifetime, and yet he's like a child every time he takes a deer. He wants to tell the story 100 times over. He's excited about it. Like in that moment, outside of all the other things, there's something romantic about that transfer of energy, right? I'm not a religious man. Actually, you mentioned God earlier today. A gentleman came up here and talked about God. And yet that's like the most religious experience, or spiritual, maybe is the better word, spiritual experience I have in my life. In that moment when I go up to this animal that may or may not still be alive and breathing, right? And I take a moment to kneel and have a conversation, right, with myself and whoever's up there watching, and express gratitude for this opportunity. And it transcends all the other stuff you're talking about.
Yeah.
Those emotions, right? Most people operate somewhere between fear and anger in the scale. Dr. Hawkins does some research, and basically he points out emotions on a scale of 0 to 1,000, 1,000 being enlightenment. Okay, and most people operate between 100 and 150, which is somewhere between fear and anger. And 200 is courageous, and like 350 is acceptance, right? And you keep going on. When I'm in that moment of deer hunting, when the deer comes out from the whole harvest, I'm in this space where it's not fear, it's not anger, it's not courage. It maybe even transcends love. It transcends this place of this primal piece of what I'm doing has an impact so much deeper. It's difficult to understand.
There's not an
words.
activity that lends as much presence as that moment does. But I'm getting the cue to bring the plane in for a landing, or bring this, or start tearing our deer stand down and pack up and head out of the deer woods, so to speak.
Yes.
I guess this hunting season, what are you most excited about? And then we can kind of wrap up from there. Usually I'll ask for an okayest moment, but that's probably a really long story too. So
most exciting, my daughter being 10.
Yep.
This will be the first, I've taken her out in the woods before. She got a new bow. She comes up for a week next week. She has a fall break. So having her shoot her bow and having her in the woods as more of an opportunity to teach her, not a companion. Like in the past, she's been a companion. Cool. It's daddy and daughter. This is more like, hey, someday this is going to be you teaching your daughter or your son how to hunt. So that's what I'm most interested in, because with my father, I'm 40 years old, and I always joke that if I want to see my dad, it's we're either working, we're hunting, or we're fishing. Mm-hmm. Right? That's how he is. Grew up on a farm, very utilitarian. And my fondest memories of my father, no matter what was going on in the house, no matter how much of a shit I was being or how many homework assignments I was missing, we always had hunting. And so being able to transfer that energy to her is what I'm most looking forward to.
That's cool. That's a good one. And that speaks to the legacy and the tradition and carrying things on in the heritage. But Andy, thanks for doing this with me, man.
Oh, absolutely.
It's kind of cool we got to finally do this.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. That's a wrap on today's episode.